Well, hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So, still working on our Jaguar XJS. It's 1989 V12. Picked it up from a neighbor and have been just going through it and everything. We've got it running. We've got the spark plugs changed, got all the fluids changed, blower motors working. Now we're tackling the little Mickey Mouse stuff like the air conditioning and the starter and stuff like that. Now, nobody has done what I am going to do with you guys today, and that is to go through all of the wiring harnesses from the battery in the trunk all the way up to the starter alternator all the way back. So this is going to be a long video. I'm going to get my fancy little pointer here, wooden chopstick. I will grab my light and let's get into it. Let me spin you guys around, and sorry for the mess, but follow along. I'm going to detail as much as I can so you guys have a clear understanding how all the electrical wiring and all that goes into this car. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. Consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to you in just a second. Here we are. We're back, and we have got a mess, okay? So bear with me. I've got my little indicator device. I've got a couple of the wiring harnesses pulled out here. The interior is an absolute disaster right now, but this is going to be kind of a long, involved video. And, rather than going through your wiring schematics and your service manual and all of that, I'm going to attempt to do what I understand I have read and of what I've researched on this particular car. So on this car, we have our battery located back in the trunk, okay? Brown in Jaguar speak is positive. So anytime you see a brown wire or a brown label like this, that is a positive 12 volt going through, or it could be, resistor wire. So maybe not be 12 volts, something a little bit less. But your negative would be your black, okay? So on this car, I've got my positive post here, or terminal. I've got my negative terminal over here. Now, it's real easy on this car because this negative terminal connects right there. Follow this around. It just basically mounts up right over in here. So that's your vehicle ground. Now, your positive is a little bit different. It starts here and it goes like this. It winds around the car, around the battery and over the fender well. It goes down like this. And then it comes up, and this is going to be very hard to see. So let me see if I can't get my light down there as well as I can. There we go. That's pretty good. So your positive battery wire, your big old, 8 gauge, it goes down and comes out, and it connects actually to the starter solenoid, okay? You have a T on the starter solenoid, and then off of that, there is a battery wire that comes up, and if you look right here, let me move this wire out of the way. If you look right there, right at the tip of my pointer, there's a little rubber booty, and then let's see if we can't get it on this side. Can I? Yeah, there we go. There's a little rubber booty right here, okay? Right where my pointer is. And then this red sheathing here is a crossover, okay? So right there is your, let me pull this booty back. There's a nut and a grommet and everything, and then that ties right into that. This crossover is your 12 volt for the post on that side. On the driver's side, and this is a US market car, so British is going to be exactly opposite of this. But you'll see, let me get my light over here again. And there you go, really easy to see here. So this right here is basically an 8 gauge, 10 gauge battery cable. It comes over, and you see the red right there, the red sheathing. Let's get it on this side a little bit easier. Oh, can we? let's see. Yeah, a little bit easier right there. So there is your little booty right there, your little cover for your chassis stud. Now this is a positive, okay? And you have basically just a nut and a post. Let me pull this back, and then we'll get our light over here so you can see really well. Okay, there you go. Right there is your post and the nut and your pass-through grommet. And then this right here, this orange color, is your crossover that goes back over there. Okay, reason I'm bringing that up on this side is because when we get on the driver's side in there, I'm going to point out where that feeds through the firewall and feeds all your electrical feeds over here. Now, let's go back over to the passenger side real quick. And, okay, so from the trunk, main 12 volt feed comes up. You got a crossover on the battery right up to here. Your solenoid has a cross, okay? It connects to that wire, and it also connects to the alternator main feed off of the alternator. So I can't really get up underneath there because I've got all kinds of stuff in the way. I have to take all kinds of stuff. The exhaust pipe, the air cleaner here, all of that off. So just follow my pointer. So basically, here's your starter is right about in this area right here. And that's where the T for the positive cables. So this positive cable goes down to the starter solenoid. Then off of the starter solenoid, the wire kind of feeds along the block through a metal tube. Almost looks like this pipe here. A metal tube right up against the block, and then it comes out for your alternator, which is way down in there. See if I can get the light down in there. And you might be able to see, almost. Let's see. Sorry about the clicking and the clacking. I'm trying to get you guys in there so you can see it real quick. Let's see if we can't get down this way. There we go. That's a little bit better. Let's see, where can I get the light? How about that? All right. So if you'll see right there, that right there is your main cable from your alternator. All these other wires are your overload device, which is right here. I'll give you a shot of that in a minute. There's your main wire, and it kind of goes just like this. Follow my pointer. It goes like this, down up against the block of the engine into a tube, kind of like I guess it's a protective tube, behind the exhaust manifold, and then over to the starter where it crosses off. So that's what feeds your battery back, right? After you start the car and your alternator spinning, then the voltage from the alternator that it's putting out, your 13.5, 14.5 volts, are supplying power to this post, as well as going back through that feed line back to the battery to recharge it, as well as that crossover to your other terminal post on the firewall. So you have two firewall posts, all right? Your overload preventer for your alternator is that black box right there, okay? It's just mounted right up to the fender well, inside fender well. And then the wires come off and it goes to the alternator windings and stuff like that in there. So it just helps regulate the power output so you're not charging, 17 volts back into the system. Now let's get into the car. Look at this mess. All right, we're on the passenger side now, and I've got all this stuff disassembled. I've got the console out. I've got the radiator removed. I've got the center vent out of the Delaware system. I've got the gauges out. I've got this blower motor lowered down to make it easier to see on this side. There's a lots of going on over here on this side. So let's get into it. Let me set you up just like this. Get my meter out of the way. Sorry about the pile. I know. All right. So follow my pointer. You see right there. Get this stuff out of the way. Right there. That is the firewall pass-through. Okay. You can see the nut, or the I've taken the nut off actually, but it's right there. All right. That feeds all the brown wires on this side. Okay. And basically all of your battery feed for this side of the car go through these right here, these brown feed wires. They're different gauges. This is like a 14 gauge. This is like an 18. This one here is, oh, I don't know, maybe a 12. But they all mount up right there. Okay. And then that just gets bolted right onto that, into that stud under there. All right. Now your ground is right here. Okay. All of these connect right there to that ground stud. And this is the kind of little strap that kind of goes around them to hold it up in there. And then all of these wires here are for your ABS system and your secondary fuse panel, which is just kind of sitting down like this. You've got all of your fuses under this little cap here. Okay, and normally this would be, your fan would be mounted up in there. You'd have your glove box, and then you would have your secondary or alternate fuse panel mounted up against that fan stud there. And then this kind of relay panel here is your bulb warning light. These here, which I'm touching with my thumb. And here, those are your bulb out indicators. So if you have a light bulb out anywhere on the car, your dash, your console, your turn signals, your brake lights, whatever, these little devices here regulate how much power is going and if it's being utilized or burned up by the bulbs appropriately. And if not, then you get the warning on your gauge cluster. Okay. Here is your seatbelt device right here, and it also has the little speaker for the seatbelt warning buzzer. So when you put the key in the car and you turn it, and it kind of buzzes if the door is open or your seatbelts aren't latched, then you would close the door, that would go off. And that is operated by the little plungers here, and the wires kind of wrap around down like this and come down and then combine to go into that. Let's see. You've got your thermal cutoff switch, this right here. Pretty easy. What that is, if your window regulator or your motor gets jammed up or overheats in one way, then what this does, this measures the voltage. Well, it doesn't really measure. What happens is you've got, let me get my pointer. You've got wire feed here and a wire feed here. So it's almost like a fuse, if you will, but it's called the thermal breaker. And what happens is if you get too much voltage, amperage in the wires going to the electric window motors, this will overheat, and then it will separate the connections between these two wires, so you won't have power to your windows anymore. All right. Let's see. We've got a cooling fan relay here. We've got a, let's see, that's what is this big pipe here? I forget what that one is. I think this is your, cooling fan, and then that's your electric fan for your radiator. This big kind of resonator right here, or this resistor right here, and it's kind of a big old cigar tube shaped thing, and that's on the back, and it just kind of clips there, and then you'll follow the wires up and it goes into this connector. All right, These connectors here basically go down into this relay panel, all into all of the things I just described. Okay, so those are all connected. The other thing while we're over here on this side, if you take the door bolster panel of your outside passenger side, you have some wiring down in here. And let me I know I'm trying to do 3 things at once here. Let me get my light set up there a little bit better. There you go. All right. This right here is for your light right here. Okay, that's your split off for your light. This brown and blue wire right here connect down into your relay pack here. And then let me pull my hand away so you can see down in here. So tucked down in this nice little cubby hole, you have all of your speaker wires for your rear speaker, your side speakers. There is a box right here where my pointer is pointing. That is your, let's see, door lock ECU right here. So if you have electric door locks, that's what controls everything. So if you have an issue with your electric door locks and they're not operating appropriately, pop up your side panel over here. It's real easy. There's 2 screws down here at the bottom, and then you've got to remove your kick plate, I guess, your knee plate from down here, and pull this away, and then you have clips holding the fabric, and then it just kind of slides out from this little slot right here for the trim panel. Okay, so that's all down in there. Now that's all nice, neat, and tucked down in there, but there's also some connectors that are kind of like this right here. And one of those I noticed wasn't plugged all the way in, so I got some dielectric grease and some contact cleaner and cleaned all that up. Now, this blue hose right here is your vacuum actuator for your blower fan ventilation. So it adjusts the flaps. Remember, if you go back on the video I shot about the blower motors, there is that big, let's move this out of the way, see if you can't see it. No. Can you barely see it? That right there, that kind of brass looking thing, that's your vacuum actuator for your flaps. So you get either heat or cooling down below, or it goes up through the defroster vents, or would normally come out over here. Now, also down there, very hard to see. Let me scoot this stuff out of the way. You've got a pass through on the fender right over there, okay? And those plugs are basically just, there's one of those plastic nodes mounted on the, right there. It's a pass through, okay? So you've got kind of a, this part of the connector firmly mounted into the metal of the frame here, and then the plug actually goes in it, and there's some pretty good size, I guess, within the plug. So take those off. There might be some corrosion, especially considering where that's at, where it can get wet and all that kind of stuff. If any, your door has been open in the past, your windshield's leaking or whatever like that. All right, let me get my light again. All right, now let's get into the guts of it. This right here, I've got it taped up, but it is a black and a red wire. And it was just kind of dangling in there taped up, and it took me forever to figure out what that is. That is actually a connector so that if you wanted to have a light bulb in your glove compartment, that's what that would be for. And, basically you would turn on your rheostat, and then that would turn on the light in your glove box. My particular car doesn't have that feature, so I guess that was a future design, and they just left that in the wiring harness there, from my understanding. Now, the main harness on the passenger side is this big, giant loom of wires here and here. They are all taped up, and then they combine with the wires coming down from over there on that side, okay, over there, kind of all jumbled up, different colors, different labels on them. You have some diodes in here. Typically, I've noticed that Jaguar has used, in their infinite wisdom, yellow tape to identify anywhere where there is a potential diode fuse holder, crimp, splice, whatever. So that's kind of unique. If you're troubleshooting, you can go and just undo the yellow tape, and you might have a diode or a connector like this where it's been, you know, crimped together, as well as here. Now this is mounted with one of those little zip tie things that kind of plug up in a hole, and it, you know, you zip tie it around. And then also on that side, there is a slotted hole about right there that you'll be able to pin all this up so that you'll get your ventilation tube going back into your HVAC crossover tube. Now, let's see what else. If you look right there, that is your ambient pressure right there. I'm touching it right there. See the wire coming off in the connector? Ambient temperature. So what that is basically just a tube, and it blows air across that. There's a big rubber tube right about under here where I'm touching. It blows air across that, and then that helps your automatic Delanair system know what the temperature is. So if you have your temperature knob set to automatic and, you know, 80 degrees, it'll know when it reaches 80 degrees and then automatically adjust through the CPU or ECU to tell the blower controls to either A, shut off, or slow down to a lower speed. Now, here's where it gets interesting. On the Delanair system, which is this giant box behind all of this and behind the dash, your ECU is right here. And if you look at all the wires right here that plug into that harness, these little pins are how you test it according to the Delanair manual. So the most important one, in my opinion, would be supply of power, and that's pin number 1. It's a brown wire, and it feeds over to fuse number 11 on this side, okay? While we're on that, let me jump back out here so I can get a shot up underneath. All right, so let's talk about that ECU for a minute. That controls everything. It controls your servo motors, which is this, and that adjusts your flaps for defrost, or your forward-facing vent there, or your vents down here to supply floor air, okay? That harness wraps around like this. Let me get under here. Wraps around like this, goes right here, goes under here, and then do you see this? I've untaped it. This right here, this plug, has 2 wires on it, basically, black and green. Okay, and they plug into this. And guess where that goes? Right into this harness, right here. And this right here is fed from a harness that basically wraps all the way around here and goes back over there. And I'll show you on that side. But also on this side, you have this wire right here, connects to the 2 vacuum solenoids. So you have one here, one there, a blue and a red vacuum supply, okay, to adjust your solenoids. And then your main vacuum supply is here. It kind of wraps up around, goes up there through the firewall, and comes out right there. Okay, this is your vacuum tune, that with the black with the yellow line on it, okay? All right, back in here. While we're on this side, just a little bit of a feature update or tidbit. This right here, this kind of bellows looking black thing in this plastic tube, that's the drain for your evaporator and your heater core, which reside basically right here up in behind the ECU. Here is one of your servo motors for your front flaps. The other one is way up here. I can't even see it, but you have to take all that apart just to get to it. This red thing, let's see if I can find it. Right up there that is one of your pedometers to tell the computer whether the flap is open or closed. So you've got your servo motor that actually operate the flaps, and then you've got a pedometer or pedometer that actually tells it to go up or down, or if it's opened or closed. All right, so we've got all that figured out. This connector, that's your 3-amp fuse holder right there, okay? So over here, all that does is control your vacuum servos, okay, for your flaps. And then it kind of wraps around here. It doesn't do anything else. This is your big meat and potato right here. This connector's right here, okay? Those wrap up here and they follow my pointer. They go like this. Then I'm going to go on the other side and then I'll pick up right there. Because I want to get a real good shot of this so everybody understands. Let me get all this stuff out of the way. All right. Sorry for the shaking. I'm getting in here, but this is going to be critical for anybody that's working on one of these cars in the future. So you and I have to run around all over the forums and try to figure out what's going on. All right. Let me get my light set up here. All right. So right here, there's our big connectors down here. They come up like this, okay? Then you've got your mode selector. So this is your fan speed, defrost, high, low. And then over here, I've got the knob pulled off, but this is your temperature selector and your manual mode. So you would turn that one way or another to adjust the temperature and then pull it out if you wanted it to be manually operated. Set a temperature and leave it there, and it just goes to 85 degrees and keeps blowing. Or when it's pushed in, that would be automatic load, register the temperature from the Venturi pipe over there, ambient temperature sensor, okay? Okay, so let's go back to this harness because this is the meat and potatoes here for everything HVAC related. It goes right up like this. It goes, let me take these wires out of the way. This is all radio. It goes right under here behind these two switches. That is your console lights, interior light right here, okay? And then this is your hazard switch and your rear defroster switch on this side. And in my case, I've got a trip computer. Some cars didn't come with that, and that's fine. To get these switches out, all you need to do is take a trim tool. These little kind of brass nubs slide down in these little plastic hole housings, and it's real easy. Just take them straight out. You don't want to kind of rock them back and forth, but those are your switches. You've got a connector on one side, you got a connector on another, and then if you look right here in the middle, you have a ground and a feed for your light bulb, and that's a very tiny little bulb. Looks like this one is burned out, so we'll replace that whenever we come to it. So slide that right back in there. Okay, now you see all the wires up here. Right here, all of this big goodness. Let me pull out the trip computer, which ain't much to it. It's just this. Lift that up. Well, look at that. All this stuff just goes that way. So everything, trip computer, your wires for your hazard switch are all just right here, and they're tucked under in a little clip. Let's see if you can't see it from the top. In a little clip, whoops. Where is it? Right there. There's a little metal clip, and then that feeds all of this stuff that comes right back over there, the main harness. Now, the other main harness, all these green and blue and yellow and orange and white, those go up like this, and then they actually cross over. Can you see it? Where's my light? There's one of your vacuum solenoid or servos. But if you look right there, I'm touching it, that plastic right there is tape around all of the wires. They come out right here and they tuck around. Look at all that big gun, right? See that? Okay. Those come back over and come out right here. And then all of that goodness, this big old hunk of wires right there, right here, they go right like this into this main harness. This is the main harness right here. Goes behind your gauges. I've got the gauges removed. They go, just follow my light right here. They kind of loop around like this, and then they go right to your main fuse panel right there. And then if I can get a real good shot of it, right there. So you see all that jumbled bunch of madness? That all comes out of this harness right here, okay? And there's a ground point right here. And then you've got, I've got the blower all connected, and the vent tube here. So it's not as bad as it looks. It looks like a squirrel's nest under there. But that's all of your feed and everything for your fuse box down here. Go through all of that main, and then over there to that side, or to, I'm going to use my flashlight as a pointer if that's okay. Or it comes into this harness, which is right here, and it feeds like this. You've got a connector right here, nice big round one, and this is this goes to like your battery, or excuse me, your radio right here. And then you've got, in my case, I've got a 12-volt plug right here that was just loose and don't appear to be anything that goes into it. This right here plugs into a harness that goes underneath the tube for your rear output on the driver's side. And then that blue and brown wire right there is your main plug. Let me get some stuff moved out of the way so I can shoot this one in here. That is your main connector. Let's see, can we get it? Where is it? Oh, where'd she go? Did she pull off on the other side? There's your other vacuum servos right there. Well, I got them. And then there's your blue and your red and your main crossover vacuum. It looks like it's got a little taped nub there that's come off, and I'll get that mounted up back in there. Well, let's see if we can't get this here for you guys to, there you go. There you go. That big monster right there. In my case, it's brown and green and brown and blue, or blue and brown and green and brown. But anyway, that is your main connector for everything power related in your console. So that includes your seat warmers, that includes your light for your, which is right here in this housing, for all of your little antique LED tubes, fiber optics, all of your window switches and all of that. Now, all this mess down here, here's for the cruise control and the, whoops, where's the cruise control? Cruise control, and then you've got your heater side switch for the driver's side, and then you've got one here. This kind of wraps around, that plugs over here, and that would be for the switch on the passenger side. Alrighty, so let me get all this stuff moved around. I know it looks like a madhouse in here. You're going to have to go back and you're going to have to look at the actual wire colorings, and you're going to have to go back and look at your wiring schematic. But I just want to get the main overview. You've got power from a post over there. Battery supplied power supplies everything on that side of the car, interior wise, as well as your trip computer and your hazard warning lights and your interior dome light and your console lights here. And then you've got a cross feed here that go to all of your control switches that feed into a main harness, and then your main fuse panel over here. Now, your ignition switch is here, and it's got a couple of wires, and that's a switched ignition. So that kind of allows power to go through the fuse to certain accessories in the car, i.e. the Delair HVAC system, or Maybe you've got a radio, aftermarket radio or something like that, or the radio itself. That's whenever you put your key into ACC or run, that, you know, allows power to supply different things, lights, and everything like that. Okay. Now, again, you're going to have to go back and you're going to look at you're going to have to look at all of the wiring schematics of the car. But staring at a page in a book and then actually seeing it in action in a jumbled mess on how the overview operates, I'm not going to go in there and tell you this one particular wire does this. Okay, I'm going to tell you this main harness connects to other things and supplies power or information, or in this case lighting, to your fiber optic lines or so forth. All right, so that main big plug, let's get back. That main big brown and white plug that we just had right here, okay, this big old sucker connects to another plug that supplies power to everything down here. Now I'm going to pull back the one of the harnesses I didn't take off was this one here, and that kind of goes underneath here, and you see it here, kind of goes up, and then it ties into the main harness up here. Well, all of these, that harness there all connects to these plugs here, and they all go kind of tucked down here to this, and then they go underneath your channel to the rear of the car. So here's all your information coming from the rear center of the car, your speaker wires and stuff for that, the driver's side. Over there, you've got everything that's kind of going back on that side of the car, okay? So here's your main thing. You've got your defroster, everything like that. There is a radio relay that would normally sit right here, right up against the side here, connected to a part of the harness. And then this is, let me pull this out and turn it around. This is actually your cool, you know, your hot cold little lever that you rotate back and forth, and then your housing. When you take your radio out, your center console or anything like that, your ski slope, whatever, be very careful with this, because you cannot just remove the fiber optic cables. You can pull them off this and this, but there are, let's see if I can't get it. See these little crimps right there? Those are like little foil, okay? And there's actually one of those wires that's crimped. You can barely see it. It's underneath here, and there's not a way to get that off of there without ruining your fiber optic, and then you're not going to have lights for this here or over here. And again, those fiber optics come right down to this housing. Basically pull this little rubber thing off here, and they go in there, and then basically all you have is like a headlight. You've got a plug that would go in there with a light bulb. And let's see if I can't get the camera set up and the light just right so you can see maybe in there. See that? It's kind of shiny in there. That's all that is, that little light bulb. So it's kind of like an overhead projector. Back in the day, Gen X, you remember in history class, Coach put the slides up on the overhead, and then you got to see how Columbus discovered America before Lee Ferguson and all that. You do have a couple of, oh, God, sorry, look at this guy. He's in here just moving wires. You do have a couple of these little plastic straps right here that are pushed down into your transmission tunnel, and then that kind of holds your harnesses together. It's kind of like a zip tie, if you will. Let's see what else. You've got your lights or your wires for your turn signal. Here's your turn signal and your washer, or excuse me, your washer and your wiper motor. And then here would be one of your connectors for your dash gauges. And then here's another dash gauge connector, as well as your tachometer. Now check this out. This is something, anybody knows what this is, let me know, because I haven't seen one of these ever. This is on the plug of the dash gauge. In my case, it'd be on the tach side. There's this little fuse holder. Let me pull this fuse out. See if I can't do it one-handed. Oh, she wants to go. Come on. This is going to blow your mind. Hang on, let me put you guys down and pull this out. Hold on. Okay, I've got the fuse connector undone. Let me take out what is in here. This is the strangest thing in the world, man. Look at that. Can you see that? It's like, let me zoom in there real close. What in the hell is that? There's no markings anywhere on it, on any of the end caps. It's like a fiberglass mesh in there. Looks like a little corrosion, that green stuff. And then wire wrapped around the outside of it. So it's almost like a wire wound resistor. But you know what? I took ChatGPT and they said that's an antique slow blow fuse. I don't know. All the fuses that I've ever seen are either glass or ceramic housed. I've never seen anything like this. And can you see that? Wire going around the outside, and you see that kind of green stuff? It's just kind of corroded. And if you look real close, you can see the actual fiber stitching, I guess, or webbing of the fiberglass mat. And then you've got these like little, I guess, brass conductor things down in the end. See that? And then the chrome. So I haven't tested it with the ohm meter or anything like that. I just took that out and I was like, what is that? Now, the ones like the fuse holders back in the rear seat that go to the speaker wires, those are kind of noise cancellation resistors. So basically that just, keeps noise out of the wires and helps regulate the current, I guess, or your power going to your speaker wires. I'm sorry for my finger being in the way. Trying to get that thing back in there one-handed. I'll come back. But anyway, those things are totally different than this. Those are actually a resistor, and those are really easy to find. I have never seen anything like that. I don't know what it is. If you know what it is, if you've watched this video thus far and made it this far without, starting to laugh and turning me off, let me know what that thing is, because I don't know if it's a noise reduction resistor for the tach. I don't know if it's a power modulation relay or resistor for any of the gauges or the gauge cluster. I honestly don't know. That is the strangest thing in the world to me. And it actually goes into the loom for the gauge plug back into the main big old hunkin' thing here. Back to this, here you have a vacuum line. This connects to a blue tube that goes over to that blower motor vacuum actuator for the flaps. Yeah, and then I know I'm looking down, but there's your main fuse panel, and you've got your main relay, your flasher, your time delay relay for your defroster, rear defroster, as well your intermittent wipers. That is that, the white and the yellow, the big old brick. And then way over there, way over there is the flasher relay. I think if you guys watched the video way a long time ago, I found that little blank wire, and that was just a trailer connector wire that was taped to it. Yeah, that red one right there. So also I've got this here is your, pull this off. That's your cutoff for your fuel injection, fuel pump right here. Inertia switch. Pull it up, red, it's off, cuts off the fuel supply to the injector in the event of a crash. Push it down, it's activated. Now it's ready to go if you get in a wreck. And the inertia triggers that. It cuts the supply to your fuel injectors, right, or the power. If you were to take this side bolster panel off right here, you would have identical to what's on the passenger side, kind of in that hole, with the exception of the door lock computer. Basically right here, you've got your hood handle. Let me get my light, sorry. Where's my light? There we go. All right, basically you've got your hood release lever right there. This right here is the light split for this. And then also you've got a wire right here that goes up just like this. See it? There it is. Goes around kind of like behind the VIN plate there. Goes up over the headliner and goes into that light right there. That's what supplies power to that. So follow that back around. That wire goes down, splits off right into there. And then you've got a bunch of stuff coming over here on the side. And some of those wires feed over into this side panel here. And the rest of them just kind of come right up like this into that big jumbled mess right there. Now, there's 4 bolts to get this main fuse panel off. There is one right there. There's one right there. And they're actually studs on the blower motor. And then you've got one that's kind of behind all this jumbled mess there, right about where my tip of my flashlight is. And then you've got one under here that you have to take off this this vent pipe here. And then it looks like my glue is coming unstuck on this little noise barrier pad. So there's nothing else really in here. You do have, you know, some crossover stuff back up underneath there. While I'm on this side, let me get my flashlight set up and my pointer. Let's go back under here because now we're on the driver's side. And I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but here's more info for you. Main harness, main plug, all of the console, crossover wiring going back to the ECU computer for the HVAC. That comes out right here. Supplies power to your vacuum servos, your feedback pitometers. See this little red thing right here? There's your flap notification device. Do you have the flap all the way closed or open on the front servo motor? You also have a servo motor on this side right there, you see? And then, very important, this, let me get up in here. Right there. You see that? There is your copper pipe coming out of your heater core. And right there, with those 2 wires connected here and here, that is a temperature switch. When you have your control dial set to automatic and you have it set to heat, let's say 80 degrees, the car will warm up before this heater core line heats up to sufficient to trigger this thermal switch right here. Those 2 lines connect at about, I believe it's 135 or 165 degrees. And then those 2 wires feed back over to the ECU over here to tell the computer, go ahead and turn the fans on. And that was back in the day. Jaguar wanted to have a car that you got into it and it didn't blow ice cold air whenever it was freezing outside until your heater warmed up. I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit. You see right there, there's another actuator, or excuse me, not actuator, but feedback pitometer. You do have a connector right up there. It's very, very hard to see, but that's a bear to get to, as well as the screws to take that pentameter out. This is going to be the hardest thing in the world for me to get a shot of, because I've got on this side everything back together. So let me see. Where we're going to go is right there. And it's the firewall post that feed your brown wires on this side of the car. So let me get the camera down in there. I don't think you're going to be able to see it, guys. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can come up this way. Well, you can almost see it. Right, I've got the rubber cap on it. So do you see right up at the top of the... Right there is the rubber booty. Basically, everything coming off of that is your brown supply lines or battery feed for this side of the car for your main fuse panel. So back behind this tube and back behind this tube here, right there, is your main brown wires that go down and feed all of your main fuses here. Okay, so very hard to see. I'm sorry, my flashlight kind of flipped around on us. I don't think I can get a better shot anywhere in there. No, it's very hard to get down. I can't get, unless I had my endoscope. One more thing, this black tube right here, it actually goes into the side of the kind of blue venturi for your blower motor that goes here. And that actually feeds, where are we? This tube right here kind of comes down and it crosses over. Let's see if I can't get a shot of it. Yeah, see right there? There's your crossover tube right there at the very tip of my flashlight. So it goes like this, it goes into that venturi, and then that goes back over. That tube right there goes all the way back over here and connects to that little venturi there. Okay, and that's your ambient temperature thing. So basically it just blows air through that tube across there to get your ambient temperature and whatever's in the car. All right, hopefully that helps a little bit, or helps somebody out in the future. In order to get the pentameter or the temperature selector switch out, this whole panel has to come off your everything, because it's mounted there with that screw right there, and that the normal screw that would be there, and then basically you've got to pull this whole thing out. And I'll show you what one looks like here in a minute whenever I get over there. But it's the same thing on this side. So if you want to change your little switch, there is a connector back on the back there. Be careful. Make sure you put that back in. But yeah, if you want to change your little switch on that side of the car for your mode adjuster, you got to take all of this stuff out, including your hot or cold selector here, just to get that switch out of there, because there's a giant rod that goes through it, and that's all one piece, that plastic thing in there. I mean, once you get it out, you can probably switch out the switch, but that's all connected. And then normally what would happen is this vent would kind of go up in there like that, and then it would blow air out of the lower side of that. All right, so hopefully that helps somebody in the future. Let's go back over here, and I'm going to show you, remember that big jumbled mess that was down there in the center console, the main big plug? Let's go back over here. I'm going to show you the two harnesses that I took out of the way. And they say electrically tested. Where can we set this down? Let's just do it here on the floor. That's pretty easy. All right, this one, main connector right there, plugs into the dash, comes underneath the radio. This right here is your cigar lighter. So you've got your center little nub connector right here. There's actually a post on the cigar lighter that plugs into. You've got a ground, and then this one is your light, okay, because the cigar lighter gets its lighting actually from the power from the harness, all right? You've got your cruise control here. You've got your 2 window switches, and they are conveniently labeled driver and passenger. So that goes up in your ski slope, and then you've got that little housing. Remember, I had one 3D printed, and then your window switches for your automatic windows, automatic powered windows, go up and down. This right here is your little bulb holder that goes into your fiber optic cable. Okay, clean that all up. And it's basically just a plunger design that plugs into that little kind of mirrored internal finish chrome housing that was next to the gear shifter in there, and supplies the lighting for that. What else do we have here? Other main connectors just kind of go into, let's see, we've got a relay on the side of the shifter and so forth. So you can pull these out individually and then test continuity, make sure your harness is good. You do have a big old crimp here. So be careful, those things tend to get corroded, so check continuity there. The bulb that comes out of that, out of your LED little housing, looks like this. I don't know what the numbers are on there. Hopefully this will show up. Looks like this one was made in Italy or somewhere. Let's see, 5 watts something. Can't really make it out. Oh, there we go. 12 volt. Does that say 6 watt? Anyway, there it is. It's kind of a round thing, kind of funny looking. Haven't seen a bulb like that. My understanding, you don't want to use a LED. You want to use incandescent filament bulbs, because that's what tells the bulb out devices that we talked about in the beginning over here on the passenger side. That's what tells that whether you got a bulb burned out or not. Here's the other harness. This is basically just the radio harness. So you got basically just the radio plug that goes in the back. You've got a relay here. This is the memory for the radio right here, this big black box in there. And then actually got a ground on it that will go to the ground point in the car. This white connector here comes off the radio that plugs into the power to like the antenna. So be careful with that. There's the ground thing there. It almost looks like that's been added after the fact. I think that was probably done after the car was manufactured, and then they went in there and pulled the radio out and actually put this relay thing in there. But it actually is taped, and it says harness something Jaguar. There's your part number, radio link. I don't know. My understanding, that's the memory. Here is your fuse holder for the radio. Can I do this one hand this time? No. It's very difficult. Here we go. Whoa! Almost dropped you guys. All right, there's your little fuse right in there. What does that say? I don't know. VDC something. 3 amp. Okay. And pull that so I don't break it. That's an OG fuse, none of that Chinesium stuff. All right, following this down, remember we got all our radio plugs and our memory there. Then we've got all of this stuff. You've got a light connector here for your gear switch or your gear shift. You've got a ground right here that goes on the gear shift housing. That's what that is. And then you've got this plug here, which is actually for your radio relay. And that's the thing I was telling you will set on this metal bracket, and I bent it up, but your radio relay would set right about right there, okay? And then you've got a connector that goes over on that side, and that's your gear selector or gear position selector switch. So all of that crap, considering that's underneath the radio and the console, add 2 more wiring harnesses. I don't know if there was a way to make it more difficult, including all of the individual wires going to everything else in here in the dash. Seems like you might be able to get some kind of like a computer coax cable, jumble all this stuff up together, and then just one big cable over, and then kind of have it branch off instead of having all these individual harnesses that are expensive and hard to source and repair. Considering whatever that thing is in that fuse holder up there, I have never seen one of those. Anyway, all right. One thing to look for on your harnesses, you have diodes, like this little thing here that's taped up. That's basically something that would regulate the direction of the flow of current. So you don't want to have current backfeed into anything that's using current, because it'll just supply power to something else you don't want it to, or it might overwhelm the circuitry. So that's why they use diodes all throughout the system, and you have them taped all over the harness. There's one there, there's one down there, there's a couple up in there, you see there, there's a couple over there. So be careful with that. Here's a big old plug for your radio. There is the main connector for the power that goes around like this, plugs right up underneath there to that big plug that I showed you earlier. What else do I need to show you in here? Or show me so I can come back and watch this again if I forget to plug something up. All of this stuff here just basically plugs right into that radio harness and the harness that we just went through. And then you've got 2 little kind of pronged connectors here, and that's your crossover between the 2 harnesses. So you've got constant power supplied throughout. If something happens to the post, it's going to feed from this side through that way of the harness and vice versa. So you've got a nice circular power supply system in here. Don't forget your grounds. Where I pointed out the grounds, couple up there on the gear shaft or the steering wheel shaft. Also up here, your positive power post for your chassis, or pass through your chassis firewall there, here and over there. I would recommend taking out the blower motors before trying to take those off. And those little booties, let me tell you something. If you ever have a problem getting, like I had to pull this wire out here. This is the fuse holder power that goes to, I believe, the Dell and Air system. This is mounted on the passenger side firewall up in there, and then it goes through right next to the ground wire mounting points. But if you ever have an issue where that little booty that covers up like the rubber protector grommet thing, take you some WD-40 and spray it along the wires here. And that'll allow that booty to come right off and slide down your wires, so you'll be able to put that right back up in there. Let me show you what I'm talking about right over here. These are sometimes a bear to get off after so many years. And where are they? Let me get them. There they are. What I'm talking about is this thing right here. So this housing would go over your battery post in this case, and the little nut that would go there. And then where it passes through right here, just take you some WD-40 and spray down right here in this, next to the wires, or some silicone grease or whatever you got, right? Something aerosol that's not going to damage your wires, and spray it right down in there, and that'll allow that to slide just like that. It'll also help take this one off of the post. And, WD-40 is my favorite stuff in the world, so hopefully a little tidbit there helps you. recommendation on the passenger side, you can do all this out without taking off the glove box door. I chose to leave it on here. You may want to take out the 4 screws here and here, and then just kind of pry this over this little rod here, and then both of these sides, they'll come off. You do have mounts right here, okay? And then you could take this door off and be able to work on the passenger side, you know, behind through the glove box a little bit easier without having, what is that, about, I don't know, 10 inches sticking out in your gut. And again, you know, going back to the switches, real easy. Let me pull one of these off so you know. Can I do it one-handed? Nope, can't do it. They're a bear to get off, but basically, let's see. Can you see right there? See that where the little posts are down in there? So that thing just kind of pushes on there, and that's what supplies power. Yeah, again, you know, look everywhere on your wiring harness where the yellow tape would be. In this particular case on the Jaguar, either somebody did this aftermarket or they did that from the factory, but it really helps out, you know, where to look for your diodes and your fuse boxes and all of that kind of stuff. On your connectors here, recommend using connector removal pliers. Very hard to take some of these off. And if they don't go back on just right, you're not going to get a good electrical connection. I'd recommend using some contact cleaner on there and maybe a brass bristle brush, and then, you know, put some dielectric grease or some, you know, electric contact, some of that battery spray, like you put on a battery terminal, kind of spray that on a cloth or something, kind of rub it around on your terminals, and then plug that in. That'll help with corrosion over the course of the life of the car, especially whenever you want to have an antique for a long time. All right, let's finish up where we started, and back in here, there is your battery. So we've started back here. We've gone all the way through to the front post, the alternator, the starter, solenoid. In the future, I'm probably going to pull that starter out, and I'll talk about that a little bit. That's a pretty involved job, and luckily, I do have to replace one of the seals on the steering linkage over here, so I'm going to be able to drop that steering rack down a little bit on this side, and then the exhaust, and I'll take the air cleaner off, and then I'll shoot another video when we get into that. Once I get all this button back up over here. Now, you're going to ask me, why in the hell are you doing this? Well, number one, I had to make sure that the ECU on the climate control computer, that Delair Mark III, was working. And I wanted to make sure all the fuses were replaced. So I went back in here and I started testing for continuity. And guess where I found the continuity problem? Between the main fuse panel, the brown wires coming over here. Okay, so that's why I did all of this. We're going to make sure all of this works and it's all the interior is back together. Then we've got to jump into the engine. We've got to do, like I told you before, we've got to do spark plug wires. We got to do the distributor. We got to lube that up. We've got to make sure the bearings and the bushings in there are all good. And then we've definitely got to do the fuel injection harness wiring, because that thing is all gummed up and, you know, 37 years old. I don't think it's going to last much longer, and I don't want to cause a breakdown on a highway or a fuse, or I don't think a fuse is going to catch it. I don't want to blow up the motor, you know, with this mini. One thing I left off, I think I talked about this in another video, but let's come over here real quick. Whoops. Nope. Don't definitely want to break my fuse holder. All right. I've got the plastic cover off, but here is your starter solenoid right here. And on the bottom of that, there's actually W1, C1, C4. So you've got a positive supply from the battery, a positive supply going to your solenoid, and then the switch in the car, and then you've actually got a wire that goes back over into the ECU to help with cold starting, which is kind of cool. So when you turn the key to start, the computer kind of thinks what the temperature is, based on various sensors in the car, and then it adjusts fuel map accordingly as you crank and for the first few minutes of running the car. It's kind of neat. What was I going to show you over here? Oh yeah, you got your headlight relay, you've got your air conditioning relay, you've got a little 10 amp fuse here. This is for the air conditioner, right over there. All right, that's for your clutch. So if that fuse blows, you're not going to get any clutch in action, as well as if you don't have enough pressure in your air conditioning system, your clutch isn't going to engage either, because it's not going to allow the Freon to flow through. Over here, I think I talked about this before, more electrical stuff, but you've got your electric cooling fan, and that's basically fed off a, you can barely see it down in there, but there is a temperature probe that goes into the rear of the radiator, and that's what controls this side fan, this electrical fan, okay? You've got your fan relay here, okay? Feeds back around that wire there, and it goes to that big long tube, kind of that cigar holder that I showed you over there on the passenger side fuse area. All your vacuum stuff is off of the engine, and down in here you got tubes that go down, and behind this fender you've got your evap purge valves and stuff like that, charcoal canister. You got headlight relays over here, you've got your Pencatron. Let's see, what was this one? I think this one is, this might be I don't remember what that is. I'm gonna have to double check what that is. I might double check the wiring on this, because, oops, look at that. We got something hanging. I'm glad I stuck my hand under there. What's this? Oh, it's like a little capacitor thing. Huh. In the wiring. Okay. Okay. Well, all right, more to visit on that. I don't want to tell anybody anything wrong on that. You got your fuse, blade fuse boxes here. So, and you got your little labels in there telling you the amperages for each one. This one here, there you go. Label in there showing you the amperages on there. Make sure you get the amperages and the appropriate size fuse in there so it'll blow whenever it needs to. You use too big of a fuse, it's not going to blow, and you're going to have a burned out wire somewhere disappear on you. And you're going to go through the whole thing like I am, trying to figure out what blew before 37 years ago nobody ever fixed. More wiring. You've got your ABS braking, both the actuators here and the reservoir reed kind of feed through here, go around like this, and go straight into this. Here's another one. Okay, there is a ground strap right there for WD-40 on that. But yeah, that goes into basically just ground your ABS wiring here. And then over there, again, is your little grommet. And all this stuff up here is just your various connectors for your throttle cable, your kick down for your transmission, your air solenoid telling the air pump. In my case, I've got the California emission system pump on there. So air injection lines. That little thing over there tells that pump to supply air based on whatever that little sensor that goes in the air cleaner on that side is. Here's your compressor clutch connector right here. You have actually two. You have a supply and a return. There's a green. So you have basically it's a big old relay. And then you got a diode here to make sure that everything, there goes the tape, but make sure all the you don't get backfeed into your line from the current. And basically you just pull this off, okay, pull this little plug off. And then on these two prongs right there, you can take your 12-volt battery, positive and negative, and touch them on there. And if your fan clutch clicks in, then you know you've got a good winding on your fan clutch, and it's not your clutch, it'll be your wiring problem. So if you ever have an issue with your fan clutch not engaging, and you know you've got appropriate sufficient amount of Freon in your system, and you know your high pressure switch on there is good, and you know your HVAC system is turned to air conditioning, and your clutch isn't working, well, double check that. Just a simple little check with your little 9-volt battery, excuse me, your 12-volt battery, and that'll engage your, make sure the engine's off and your ignition is off. You don't want to put any current into the system, feed any current into the system where it doesn't need to have it. Alrighty, so just go back over here. I told you it was going to be a long one, but folks, nobody out there has done this that I have seen. Everybody's out there reading on the manuals and stuff like that, and reading on the forums, and their guess is as good as mine. But I'm going through here to show you a nice, good overview on what to look for. Okay, engine side harnesses. You've got your, now on my particular XJS is 1989, so prior to that high efficiency V12, they had a different setup. But on my particular one, we have what's called a resistor pack. So this is big old chrome thing here, housing, and there's a bunch of resistors in there. And then you've got giant connector that goes down there, and that's what supplies fuel injector triggers through the fuel injector harness right there. So basically, fuel injector harness, 12 of them, just goes down like this, and then plugs right into the bottom of that. And actually, I think there's a connector down over here before it goes to that. And so we'll be able to pull that off and hopefully repair it really easy. Here is your cruise control bellows. Keeps the constant speed on your throttle through this electric switch here, and through a little solenoid right there. And then you've got, you know, another little switch here that goes around. Follow this wire, goes right here, loops around, and then it goes to this big plug, which goes around here to this harness, which goes to that big plug, which goes down there, and then connects to your oil pressure. You can hardly see it, I'm sorry, but your oil pressure device, or pressure switch or reader there. And then you've also got a reading that goes to your AC, probably easier to see on this air conditioner. Let's see, can you see it? Yeah, see this thing right here? So you've got actually wires that kind of plug into that to tell the system whether it's operating sufficiently up here in the front. Other than that, that's about all there is. Pretty simple. I'm not going to pull off the ECU side panel back here in the trunk because you guys have seen that before, but I will step back here and describe a little bit about it. Remember all those I described underneath the center console, the ski slope, the harnesses that feed the back speaker wires, the carriage lights on the inside right here on the back of this kind of wing. The wiring actually comes back like this, and then you've got up underneath here, and then behind this panel you got some ABS stuff back here, braking for the rear. But then you've got all of your plugs back here. And then normally you would have, well, I wouldn't say normally, but you would maybe have a CD changer back here. So there is a plug for a CD changer wired into the loom. And then that CD changer would set here. And then you got your brake, reverse, turn signal light, or actually brake, turn, side marker lights. And then your reverse, your number plate wiring is on this side here, kind of goes up like to supply power to that. You've got your antenna here, you've got your actuator, and your cable mechanism kind of winds up and down, makes that battery go up and down. You've got a big bunch of plugs up underneath here, right there, for this side light package. And then behind this, and behind that is your engine computer. You've got a couple of relays, fuel injector relay. You got some wiring that's going back over there. So there's a big old bundle of stuff that goes back up through the system from back here. More of that stuff in the service manual. I'm not going to get into it in this particular case, but there you go, folks. Hopefully that's helped you. I don't know what else I could go into. Maybe if you haven't seen what the, how about this? How about we'll do this? Here's the cigar lighter. There is the little thing that connects to the side of it that makes it heat up. There's your main power. There's your ground. You push that down in there like that, and it's spring loaded. Once that heats up, it's kind of like an iron. Everybody probably has a burn mark on there. Oh, you know what? I don't think I can take that out now that I put that down in there. Nah, we'll put 12-volt battery to it, pop right out. But yeah, that little coil down in there. Let's see. Radio relay. Here you go. Side of the gear shifter. Cruise control switch. Might want to clean up those just a little bit. Those look kind of burned, don't they? Ooh, I didn't even notice that. Look at that. Okay, well, we're gonna be looking into this. Cruise control off, on. All right, that shouldn't be like that. It definitely shouldn't look like fire. Looks like something's gotten hot. What do we got? They should look like this, or brass, right? Remember, I marked them right, left, driver, passenger. Here's the little ABS console switch housing that I had 3D printed. Look at that. Isn't that cool? So that'll clip down in the ski slope, and then here I've got them. So remember when I was talking about taking off the ski slope, the wood, right? Don't take this off. This thing is $50, dude, unless you find somebody to 3D print it. Lift it up enough to take the plugs off. Now you do have to take off the cigar lighter and the speed control, but those are easy. Those just pop right out. This one here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little clips on the side that go down in the hole, and you break that, guess what? $50 later or more. Radio, very simple. It does have a security code in my particular model because it is that electronic. I got it upside down, sorry. It is the electronic one or digital readout and all that kind of stuff. But it is a stock OEM radio with security. So what that means is when you first turn this, after you disconnected and reconnected the battery, the main battery to the car, once you turn this on like that and it lights up, it says code. And then you use these buttons, 2, 3, 7, 6, whatever your code is. And if you don't have the code for the car, you have to actually figure out what that is. And hopefully somebody wrote on here somewhere. It's usually the last of the serial number or what have you. But there is a way to get that out of there. You do have a 10 amp fuse right here. You can pull out. That's actually in the case of the radio. So if somebody doesn't know about that, check that fuse if your radio isn't working. You have your antenna connector here. You have your just standard, these are just standard old plugs for any radio will work probably, depending on what your pinouts are. And you'll be able to plug that right in, and then there's your radio. So this plug plugs into another harness in there, that big jumbled up mess that has about 20 different wires coming off and going to the speakers, positive, negative, different polarities and all that kind of stuff. So each one of these connectors and these wires supply power and output to multiple things in there. Oh yeah, I was going to tell you about the switches on the Delaware system. So remember, let's say we're looking at the passenger side and the door's open. This would sit like this and then like that. See how that's mounted on? You've got a screw here. You got a couple of little plastic nubs that you got to pry off, these little plastic rivets here and here. And then that pops out, and then you'll be able to get that whole shaft out. Now, in my case, it's an electronic kind of circuit board in there. Other ones have actually micro switches that you have to kind of get in there and lubricate, but from my understanding. But this one actually has a circuit board in there this knob turns a flat metal wheel with some ears on it, and it connects little prongs. I wish I could take that off and show you, but basically, let's use this washer. Basically looks like that. So high, low, medium, defrost, whatever. And as that little, you turn the knob, the little fingers line up with the little fingers on the circuit board, and that, you know, allows current to flow and whatever. Okay, everybody's done a lot of videos on the gauges. Basically, here's a gauge pack. Be very gentle with these. I don't know where you would be able to find another printed circuit board like this. Your main harness connector here for the tack side. Here's the main for all of your gauges, your speedometer. You do have just your standard little bulbs here, 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 and here. And if I pull one of these out, you'll be able to see what they look like. Just like they're certain wattage on a certain size. They're 3 watt. Okay, you can't just put a normal old 194 bulb in there like you would in any other car. But the way these go in there, you just kind of push them one side, push them to the other, and then they lock down in there. Make sure they're good and seated, because you got to have a seat and a seal. Some dielectric grease here wouldn't be a bad idea. This does plug both ways. Be careful when you go to put that harness connector in, because if you see, these are all solid brass, and then you got a little gap here. You are going to have a little gap where there isn't a connector on your harness, and you want to make sure that's in there right and not wrong. If you turn it around like this, you're giving power to something that didn't need it, and something is not powered that does need it. Same thing with here. This can go 2 different ways. All right. I didn't mess around with any of the screws or the bolts or any of the nuts on this because I didn't want to mess it up. I did go ahead and put tape here. You might want to do that. I did spray this whole thing down with some contact cleaner. This is just some like corrosion. It's not like anything caught on fire or anything like that. Or it's just kind of, the metal's kind of rusted. Not a big deal. That's just a ground strap kind of thing that goes across there. But that does ground out your LEDs. Well, they call them LEDs. They're tiny little light bulbs that kind of clip down in there. And I think maybe I might have shown you what those look like, but they're very, very small. And you take off this screw here, this lens cover here kind of slides out, and then take you a little piece of fuel hosing or hose like this, stick it down on the bulb, and then you'll be able to pull it out. Same thing with putting it in. You'll be able to get it right down in there because your fingers aren't going to be able to get down in there. So use a tube, make sure it's clean and everything, put your bulb in there, and you just kind of press it down there, boom. And then you can use like a pick or something to hold it down in there while you take the tube off. Neat little trick. So there we go on that. I think we got most everything else. The horn is going to be a little bit of an issue on this car because of the way the button kind of works. I do need to replace more electric, but I do need to replace that little ignition amplifier. There it is, the GM infamous ignition amplifier. So we'll get that replaced out of there while we do the fuel injection lines and all that kind of stuff. And then you might have noticed I got the timing light over there. So that's many, many moons from now. Go from there. And I did finally get the little bracket. I went ahead and bought the whole damn thing for the HVAC, the hot water valve for the evaporator core, the heater core. I went ahead and got the whole thing because the only thing I needed was this bracket that holds it up on the firewall. And look what a pain in the ass that is to change out. So I'm just going to change this whole thing in. And it is a Chinesium one, but whatever. What are you going to do? All right. So thanks for sitting through the madness. Hopefully that helps someone in the future. If anything out there that you all would suggest, anything I've mislabeled or misstated, by all means, put it in the comments below. I'm not trying to mislead anybody. I'm just trying to put in a visual aspect what's in this car behind the dash, because it's scary looking at it. But when you break it down to the major components, it's pretty damn easy. It's kind of like the big engine up there. You know, it's a bunch of stuff just kind of, you have to take parts off just to get to the main thing. That's the big pain in the ass. You're welcome, Jaguar mechanics that are billionaires out there, from working on these cars for 75 hours to fix a distributor cap. I don't know. I'm just here working in my garage, and this has been an absolute fun job. But man, I'll tell you what, if you got OCD, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, because this is going to help you in the future. And hopefully you guys will go out there and share this around. I'm sorry for the long video, but hopefully this helps somebody in the future. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful week. Bye.